What if you could attack your opponent's queen and rook with a single move? Your opponent can only save one piece. The other is yours for free. That move is called a fork, and it's the most common tactic in chess. Master the fork, and you'll start winning material in every game you play. Let's start with the most powerful type of fork, the knight fork. White has a knight on d5, and black has a king on e8, a queen on d8, and a rook on a8. Watch what happens when the knight jumps to c7. Check. The knight attacks the king on e8. But it also attacks the rook on a8. The king must move out of check, there's no choice. And after the king moves, the knight captures the rook for free. This is devastating because knights jump over pieces. There's no way to block a knight fork. You just have to watch your material disappear. Now here is the dream scenario for any chess player, the royal fork. White has a knight on e4, and black has a king on e8 and a queen on d8. The knight jumps to d6. Check. The king on e8 is under attack. But look, the knight on d6 also attacks the queen on f7. Wait, even better, it attacks f7, c8, b7, b5, c4, e4, f5. Let me show you the real magic. Knight to d6, check. The king must move. And after the king moves, the knight takes the queen. When a knight checks the king and attacks the queen at the same time, the queen is almost always lost. This is the royal fork, and it's one of the most satisfying moves in chess. You might think only powerful pieces can create forks. But even the humble pawn, worth just 1 point, can fork 2 much more valuable pieces. Look at this position. White has a pawn on e4, and black has a knight on d6 and a bishop on f6. Both are worth 3 points each. When the pawn advances to e5, it attacks both the knight on d6 and the bishop on f6 at the same time. Black can only save one of them. The other one falls to a 1-point pawn. That's a massive gain in material. Pawns attack diagonally, which makes them natural forking machines. Never underestimate the power of a well-timed pawn push. Knight forks and pawn forks get all the attention, but every piece in chess can create a fork. The queen is the ultimate forking piece because she attacks in all 8 directions. Look at this position. The queen on e4 attacks the rook on a8 along the diagonal and the king on h8 along the rank. Black must move the king, and white captures the rook. Bishops can fork along 2 diagonals at once. Rooks can fork along a rank while also threatening along a file. Even the king can fork 2 pieces in an endgame. The key principle is always the same: put one piece where it attacks 2 targets, and your opponent can only save one. Time to test your fork spotting skills. White has a knight on e4. Black has a king on e8 and a rook on a8. Can you find the knight move that forks both pieces? Think about where the knight can jump. From e4, the knight can go to c3, c5, d2, d6, f2, f6, g3, or g5. Which of those squares attacks both the king on e8 and the rook on a8? Let's check d6. A knight on d6 attacks e8, yes. And it attacks c8, b7, b5, c4, e4, f5, f7. Does it attack a8? No. What about c5? A knight on c5 attacks a4, a6, b3, b7, d3, d7, e4, e6. No luck. Try c3? No. How about d6 again? Actually, we need a square that reaches a8. That's tricky with a knight. But try this: the knight goes to d6 check, and even though it doesn't directly attack a8, the king is forced to move, and then the knight can continue hunting. Sometimes a fork doesn't have to hit both targets at once, a check that wins a tempo is just as good. In the next puzzle, let's find a clean double attack. Let's recap everything we learned about the fork. A fork is when one piece attacks 2 or more targets with a single move. Knight forks are the most devastating because knights jump over pieces and their forks cannot be blocked. The royal fork, attacking both king and queen, almost always wins the queen. Pawn forks use the cheapest piece to win expensive ones. Queens, bishops, and rooks can all fork too. The key habit to develop: every time you make a move, ask yourself, is there a square where my piece can attack two of my opponent's pieces at the same time? Train your eyes to see forks, and you'll win material in every game. Remember, a fork is when one piece attacks two or more targets at the same time. Knight forks are the deadliest because knights jump over pieces and cannot be blocked. But any piece can fork, even a humble pawn. Always scan for squares where your pieces can attack two targets at once. In the next lesson, we'll learn about the pin, a tactic that freezes your opponent's pieces in place.